My name is Colleen Fitzpatrick of IdentiFinders International. I'm a optical physicist, retired now, and I am now working in forensics. When I retired in 2005, I had a book that was just about done called Forensic Genealogy. I love forensics and I love genealogy, and somehow I put them together into a book, thinking it would be nice for retirement to have, to write a book, have some income. And to my surprise, it was a smash. It was a smash in the mostly the genealogical world, but with my technical background, I couldn't leave well enough alone. So within a couple of years, I was working for the Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory, the Center for Human Identification, the FBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, law enforcement, some private individuals doing forensic genealogy. I find people for a living. It's fascinating. One of the big areas of forensics of high interest is the detection of clandestine graves, both overseas and for law enforcement in the United States. I sat in a talk yesterday on the characterization of spoiled meat using Raman spectroscopy, and I see a very good application of that technology to the detection of clandestine graves by characterizing the vapor over the graves, or maybe some of the contents of the soil where the graves are. One of the big areas of development in photonics is DNA. DNA is an amazing substance. Now first, there's a lot of developments in the analysis of DNA, that is, analyzing lower and lower amounts of DNA and more fragmented parts of DNA, more degraded DNA. And that involves a lot of technologies, a lot of chemistry. There's developments of DNA analysis depends on fluorescent dye. So there's a lot of developments in spectroscopy, spectroscopic analysis of DNA, the developments of the dye, the detection of the dye, detection of intensity, the fluorescence intensity generated by the dyes when DNA is present in the analyzer. There's also a lot of work using DNA as a photonics material, as both an insulator and a conductor. I was talking to someone at this meeting just yesterday about that, and also DNA is actually a pretty tough molecule in some cases, and my understanding, which I learned, is that it's not very resistant, but it can tolerate high levels of ultraviolet, which is very important in some photonics applications. It's very hard as an entrepreneur to balance my creativity with my need for an income. I tend to err on the side of creativity, but again, I'm responsible, so I realize that, and I do offer services. And the really good part about it is that some of the things that I've created, some of the methods of finding or identifying people that I have invented on the creative side of me are very interesting to people who are willing to pay for the services because they're so different. Like law enforcement, as I've mentioned, and then private people, say, searching for their birth parents. What I do is so different that it's attracting a lot of attention. Working for myself for so many years, I want to say that many people quit their job because they don't like their boss and they want to work for themselves. Well, when you work for yourself, you're going to work for an even worse boss than you had on your job. And furthermore, people quit their jobs because they want to be more in control of what they do, more in control of their income stream and the workload. And that's also a myth, because you're not in control. It's just a different kind of not being in control. There's surprises, there's things you don't anticipate, there's problems you don't have when you have a job. So you have to look forward, you have to be flexible. I would also suggest that if someone decides to quit their job, to already have in mind what they plan to do, to have a business plan, and to really accurately assess what the potential is for that business plan. When I started my optics company, I already had an optics lab. I was using it sort of in an informal sense to do holograms, holography, which I very much liked. And when I started my company, I didn't have to purchase any capital equipment or any software. So that was a really important thing, because when my income ceased from my job, I didn't have to invest the money into buying things. I could invest the money basically in living while I was working to develop my business. I see a great influence by television and movies on younger people going into forensics or thinking about going into forensics, and this is good and bad. It does open their eyes to the possibilities that they can do that, and also to the fact it is a very big field of research. On the other hand, it creates false expectations about what can happen. If you're watching a TV program and then the commercial's over and the guy runs into court holding the DNA results, and it turns out that juries start to expect that kind of thing. So as the trial is going forward and the topic of DNA comes up, of course they're more comfortable with the concept, and they know what that is, but they expect you to produce the results after the next commercial. And there are no commercials in court. So some of the expectations have risen to unreasonable levels, but yet I think that the majority of people will eventually realize that at the same time that technology will advance. So hopefully they'll meet in the middle at some reasonable level that will be acceptable to both sides.